for our buddies just joining us, we're at 300 people now. Let us know in the chat, what field are you transitioning from to design? You have so many variety here from all fields. I feel like I've seen everything. Awesome, cool. So we are now live. Welcome. We're super excited to be here with our buddies at Designlab on how you can leverage your own background for design interviews. I know a lot of us didn't come from a traditional design background, and at least for me, I definitely felt a lot of imposter syndrome going to design. And so today, we hope that you can take away some actionable tips on how you can use your background as a strength to go into design. And I'll share a couple of quick slides, and then I'll kick it off to Emily. But if this is y'all's first Design Buddies events, welcome. I'm Grace. I'm the founder of Design Buddies, and full-time, I'm a product/UX designer at Electronic Arts based in the Bay Area. And Design Buddies is an inclusive community where all designers can level up. So this means we host a lot of wholesome events like this, resources, we have a job board, and all these resources that help you land jobs in design and connect with each other and have a fun, wholesome time. I love the word wholesome. It's like one of my favorite words. So you'll probably see me use that a lot. And you're all welcome to connect with us on any of our social media platforms. And just a quick house rules, events are recorded, so y'all be able to, we'll send you a recording of this event afterwards. This is also live streamed on YouTube, so if you don't want to be part of the recording, you can watch us on YouTube. Feel free to engage in the chat, and if our hosts or speakers say something y'all vibe with, feel free to just contribute in the chat. It's all open for y'all to connect with each other. We also have a networking sheet where y'all can plug your links, because we really want to encourage y'all to connect with each other, support each other in your wonderful design journeys. We will not have a Slido for this one, but we have some interview questions that we'll be prompting you through. We'll take a group photo at the end. Also be sharing some Zoom backgrounds y'all can use as well if you want to turn on your camera. If anything vibes with you tonight, let us know on social media, tag us, tag Designlab, tag Design Buddies, tag our speakers. We want to know what y'all learned. Connect with each other, hop into our Discord, have fun. And yeah, with that, I'll hand it over to Emily.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I am the community manager at Designlab. That is one of my two personalities. The other one is a full-time UX designer at a construction company here at San Diego. I'm very excited to be here. Also really excited that all of our panelists here are here to talk about how they manage to transition careers from something that's just not design, and how they convince someone to hire them, because that's certainly an experience that I went through years ago. And I know that that's something that a lot of folks struggle with, that Grace and I kind of chatted about, and we thought that this would be a great idea. So to get started, we are going to have our panelists introduce themselves. They're going to popcorn to each other, so that way they can share kind of information about themselves, what they're doing now, what industries they came from, and what really inspired them to become designers. After that, we're going to go through some types of interview questions that you may kind of encounter in your design interviews. And we're going to ask our panelists, how have they answered it in their interviews, any tips that they have. And if anyone who's an audience member today has anything that they'd like to contribute, please do so in the chat, because everyone's answers are really valuable. Everyone's perspectives are valuable. So we want to make sure that everyone is heard. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to have Melissa be our first person to introduce herself and talk about what she's doing today and how she got into design.
Woohoo. Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa. My background is in construction. My undergrad is in construction project management, and I spent a good chunk of my professional career working for a general contractor and also a landscape supplier and a flooring company. I got into UX because I wanted to service the tradespeople and also have an impact with the digital products that they worked on. So that's my background. I'm currently a UX designer for a company called BuildForce in Austin, Texas, but I'm from Minnesota, so yeah. And I will popcorn Katie.
I'm Katie. I live in Utah. My background is photography. I've done basically anything within photography, from product photography to weddings to publishing a book of photography, landscapes, all sorts of things. And a couple years ago, I had never even heard of UX. I had no idea what it even was. And then when it was explained to me, it was like, oh, they pay you for that. That sounds amazing. And that's when I kind of started looking into different courses, found Designlab, made the career change. And now I work for Level, which just recently acquired Dwello, doing smart home automation. Let's go with Kenny.
Sure. So I started out kind of my journey different or same as everyone else on this panel, where it was not starting out from design. And I first went to chemical engineering thinking that, I'll go into biomedical engineering. It seemed like, throughout my different school years that life sciences and things like that was where I wanted to go. And in my fourth year, I hit a point where I realized, hey, like this maybe wasn't what I wanted. I didn't really love bio research, but I still went with it anyways and graduated and went into project management, where essentially I worked for a nonprofit called CSA Group, helped manage different projects, did a lot of like process improvement. But over the different years, it just felt like my life didn't really have a purpose. I reached a point in my life where things felt kind of different shades of gray. And that's kind of when I reached out to a life coach. And that's kind of how I discovered UX. I then took the chance to kind of speak to somebody who was working at the time who also transitioned from engineering to UX and was living in SF. And they kind of pointed me in the direction in sort of, boot camps and things like that. So kind of took that part-time program with BrainStation, learned a lot, but at the same time, I was like, hey, like I should still try and transition slowly. I shouldn't just jump into it. And it was only until last year, 2 years ago during COVID, I kind of tried all these different jobs that, hey, maybe I could leverage some of the UX skills I've learned over time, see if I can soft transition there. And it just didn't work out. And I said, you know what, like really unhappy with the job. So maybe it's time to just take the leap of faith. So then I quit my job and did another full-time boot camp with BrainStation again, and then went through 6 months of job search. And now I'm at my second job. And yeah, that was really long-winded, but I will now pass it off to Mai.
Hi, I'm Mai. I'm currently in Seattle, Washington, and I'm a UX designer at Bungie working on the Destiny 2 game. And I come from a very unrelated, very kind of distant background. So I actually studied music, music business, music industry, some audio production in college. I studied cello, so that was very different. And after I graduated, I didn't really know what to do with music. I was like, I don't know if I want to work in the music industry anymore. And so I was kind of floating along, and I fell into some front-end web development. So I was teaching myself like HTML, CSS, and all this stuff. And in the middle of that, that's how I learned about UX design. And I was finding that during, while learning like HTML and CSS, I was more interested in how to make design decisions behind all that. So that's how I got the UX design. I took the UX Academy course at Designlab. And like, I think I want to say halfway or maybe 3/4 of the way through, that's how I heard about game UX design. And that's where my interest got in that particular area. So after graduating, I actually took quite a bit of time off to learn more about game design in general, how UX falls into that area, and making sure my portfolio kind of reflected the game UX interest and game design. And yeah, at first I was kind of nervous that like my background wouldn't really fit with any of that. Like, oh my gosh, it's so unrelated. No one's going to take me seriously. But like there actually was a lot to draw from, because like for music and customer service, there's a lot of people working and team working. So it was making sure that you can draw from those backgrounds, and that really helped me a lot during the process. And yeah, that's me. Who hasn't gone? Sorry, I keep forgetting who actually went and didn't. Oh, Crystal, okay. Sorry.
It's okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal, and I came from a humanities and healthcare background. So I guess I would start from even before university. I would always consider myself a pretty artistic person. I've always loved being creative, art and music and all that. But going into university, I wanted to study it, but my parents were like, no, that's not a job. Don't study it. That's not a career. So I ended up going into humanities, and I wanted to become a vet and go into the healthcare route. And then one thing led to another. I just ended up working at a pharmacy, which was, it was fun. It's a little bit of customer service. I learned a lot about drugs. And throughout university, that was really fun, learning problems about humanitarian crisis and, how health and our society kind of are interconnected. But, I was pretty miserable. I did not like it at all. I feel like I wasn't able to be creative in any way. So towards the end of university, that's when I started thinking like, I need to do something else because I know this is not it. And that's around the time I discovered UX design. And like Katie said, I think I also had no idea what it was. I was like, what is this design thing? But after digging into it, I thought it was so fascinating, so interesting. It's a combination of being creative, making things look pretty, but also at the same time being functional, understanding the users, understanding psychology, and also technology, which is like an area that I didn't have any experience in, and that would be really exciting to tap into it. So that was the time that I started looking into, what it takes to transition into design. I talked to a lot of people, a lot of designers in the industry to learn kind of like, what is day-to-day job? What do you do? And is this something I really want to do? And I later enrolled into a short course at Designlab where I taught myself, well, I didn't teach myself, but I learned the basics of design, like color theory, typography, and that kind of pushed me to build my first portfolio project. And then one thing led to another. I interviewed, networked a lot, went through a phase where I was job hunting and was getting rejected left and right, but it worked out in the end. And now I am working as a product designer at Microsoft Teams, and I'm based in Toronto. And after work, I just I mentor and I get involved in communities like Design Buddies.
That is awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. If anyone's going to walk away and take anything with them, just know that it doesn't matter what industry you come from. Anyone can be a UX designer. And Mai said something that resonated with me so hard because that's something that I had struggled with when I first transitioned careers was no one is going to take me seriously. Like truly, like I really felt that there's no way that I could sell someone on the fact that my past skills could transfer into this new career. And 6 years later, here we are. So truly anyone can do it. It does not matter what field you come from. So we are going to get started with the first question. This segues really nicely. The first question for any of our panelists to kind of jump in and answer is how did you explain why you decided to move to design from your previous industry? And how did you make your case?
I guess I can start. So this isn't like super in depth, but I was thinking about that question too when I was getting ready for interviews, like how the past experiences made me decide to do UX design. For me, it was a lot of customer service because I was working in retail at the time. And like during that job or retail in particular, it was a lot of problem solving with customers. Like they have a lot of specific demands and like maybe even crazy ideas that they want you to do something a certain way that you might not be able to do. So you had to like work to like kind of de-escalate like certain issues or situations. So which is a lot of problem solving. And so I brought that into my answer for that during the interview because that came up I think in every single one. So for me, it was working with people also meant a lot of problem solving. And in retail, you're still using like software or like certain things to like make orders and everything else go smoothly. And during that time, I was also seeing a lot of user issues in that kind of software too. So those are the two things that I brought up in my answer for that question. It's like, I'm noticing these issues with customers and software and how it affects their experience at the stores. So, and that makes you like want to solve it and make sure things are resolved for your customers. So yeah, that was my answer for that. Especially if you're coming from a customer service or a retail job, I think that really helped a lot.
Kenny, I feel like I want to hear from you.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
So for me, I definitely noticed I used to answer this question a certain way, and I liked how Mai answered it, because how I used to answer it, I used to focus a lot on my previous background. And I think what happened with that is it often then comes off as if I am less experienced. Whereas now how I answer that is now I talk about what is my passions. My passions is in, really making a difference in the user and being able to connect with them. Whereas before in the past, it's always, focusing internal metrics and things like that. But what I start to focus on is, hey, like, let me tell you about the skills that I can bring, I can leverage from my previous job, whether it is data analytics to different sort of, hypothesis testing, or, presenting in front of a large audience. So I start to explain my background from that perspective. And I think that's helped a lot compared to just saying, hey, come from chemical engineering, I know it's different, and things like that. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. I think I would like to hear from everyone. So I'm going to popcorn to Katie.
Yeah, Kenny, I really like your answer, because I think that's true. Focusing on kind of forward, like what you want to move forward to, rather than like, oh yeah, this is where I'm coming from, and let me talk about that for so long. You don't have to like be ashamed of it or anything. But so with photography, coming from that is a creative industry, right? Like I definitely, they could clearly see that I had an eye for design and aesthetic and all of that. Like I had that, but to explain like that wasn't enough for me. I really like the problem solving that comes with UX. I really like the practicality, right? I would tell people, I will always do photography. I love doing photography. For me, I love, like that's how I sort of de-stress, is through photography. But what really excites me is everything that comes with UX. And then I would talk more about UX and maybe relate, like when you, as a photographer, you're working with people, and usually you're working with like people's insecurities a lot of times, and trying to really be able to communicate well when people are feeling uncomfortable in front of a camera. Or if you're doing product photography, it's really understanding what the stakeholder wants, because they'll just be like, here's a product, make it look good. And it's like, okay, but in what way are we going to make this look good? So, there's definitely things that translate that are soft skills and crossover skills. But yeah, moving forward to like, this is how I would use it in UX. This is how I'd use it in UX.
Cool. Thank you. Next on my screen, Alicia.
Yeah, this is a really fun question. When I think about this question, I think about like my why and why I decided to embark on this UX journey in the first place. And, I think UX, being a UX designer and working in that industry, when people share their story, they say it's because it allows them to be creative and it allows them to solve problems, right? So you can be creative and solve problems in another role and really like in any position. So if you can hone into that, like what about being creative and what about solving problems within the industry, that's like what I did. And I found that I came into UX wanting to work in the construction tech space, because when I was on site, I was that younger person that knew how to use an iPad and a computer. And the people out there, they have like their big sheets of drawings, and I'm like, no, let's bring this into the iPad so you don't have to carry around all these drawings on site. And I also had an affinity for the tradespeople. I was kind of like that sore on their side, like always bugging them about tech and always trying to advocate for tech on site. And I don't know, I found that there was like definitely beauty in being able to like be somebody who is very different in an industry and provide and have some skills that you can bring to them. So I honed into that, and I wanted to find a way to like do tech, construction tech specifically, and also work with construction tradespeople. So that's kind of like how I explain my decision on why I decided to get into UX, was because I wanted to serve the tradespeople and I wanted to work for a construction tech company. And those were kind of like my pivotal decision. And UX allowed me to listen to the problems tradespeople were having on digital products and then find a way to like solve those problems. So that's how I explain why I decided to move into UX. And I think, Crystal,
Yeah.
popcorn to you.
Thanks. So everyone has such great answers, and I feel like mine is probably really similar. For me, I really focused on, I did talk about my background a lot and, kind of what I was missing from my background. So like I mentioned, I was studying humanities in school and I felt like, I was solving problems all the time, but all I could do was really write papers, come up with policies, put it into presentations. And I just didn't feel like there was a creative aspect to it. And also didn't feel like there was that much of an impact. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just didn't think like my work really mattered that much. And that was the main thing that I was missing for me in my career. So when I go into interviews, that's the main thing I mentioned. I talk about, hey, like the reason why I want to work at your company or, build products using creativity is to make these impacts. So another thing I always like to bring up is I think good designs are invisible and intuitive because they're so intuitive that you shouldn't be able to notice it. People or users shouldn't notice that's the intention behind their designs. So I always want to bring that up in my conversations and say that I just want to be able to be like working behind the scenes and get my hands dirty and, put together that app, that software, whatever product it is, and then just to make people's days a little bit better and they don't even realize it. So that's kind of the main drive that I kind of focus on when I answer that question in interviews.
Yay. Thank you all. That was awesome. Hopefully there were a lot of great takeaways from the responses, but if you also have your own response, please toss it in the chat. Grace, do you want to pose the next one or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, you do it. Yeah, and also I see a lot of great responses in the chat. I see dentists.
I see
a lot of questions about
Mai has her
portfolios.
hand up. Just wanted to.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry,
Mai.
Mai, go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot to add, also, because I studied music and I played in a lot of music ensembles and kind of like a creative field, I also brought in that with music, you're shaping experiences for your audience. They want to like hear how you interpret the music, what kind of message or story you're trying to tell. So I brought that into UX design as well. And also, it wouldn't hurt to also bring in just like general interest too. I like watching behind the scenes stuff for like movies and all that stuff. So it kind of shows that you're very curious. You have an interest in like creativity. You want to see how things work. You want to see how props are made, how costumes are made, how music was written or a score for a movie or a TV show. So I think like besides just experiences, no matter which industry it's from, I think just showing like a general curiosity and interest in like certain areas, things that you love is also really important to bring in. Like in addition to that, as like I like reading books, so I like shaping experiences in that way too, like writing. So I think that's also important to bring in just general interests and hobbies as well. And that was just my 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely +1 on that. I think I also definitely bring on my hobbies in interviews as well. And yeah, those are great answers. I love how, Kenny, you mentioned like focusing on moving forward instead of like in the past and your future goals. And let's our next question is, what skills would you say are most transferable across industries? I know there's a lot of great answers in the chat and from our panelists, but just more specifically, what transferable skills? And anyone can go first. If not, I'll pick. Oh, Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go. So I think most importantly, I remember when I was first looking into getting into UX, and I can see some questions about this in the comments. I was so worried about like, what, should I use Figma or Adobe XD? Should I, like all of these things I was really worried about. And actually it's more Like, yes, be good at the tools, learn the tools. It doesn't matter which ones. But more importantly, like, be a good person. Having just like being someone who's good to work with and that people like, and that you're flexible, and just really basic soft skills. That is probably the thing that got me furthest in my job hunt. I realized I was really nervous when I ventured out into interviewing, right? Not coming from a tech background at all, and not really having any like schooling that was impressive. And I found that it was actually so not a big deal, because I just got along well with my people who I was interviewing with. Like we could just sort of have a conversation instead of like, these are my skills, these are what's important, da, 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 da. It was just like they could see me as a person, I could see them as a person, and now I work on like an amazing team with actual real humans. So instead of getting really nervous about, I mean, you do have to have a solid skill set, but also just like be a nice person to work with, and people will want to work with you, and people will give you that chance, and people will want to mentor you. So just, yeah, be a good person.
Definitely +1, and low ego, curiosity. Like I used to feel like I had so much ego in the past, and it really like was not helpful for me. So just be open-minded, curious, also helpful. Who else wants to go next? Oh, go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything Katie said. Yeah, like the skills and the craft of design, that's super important, but you can always pick that up, on the job. And when you're learning the tools, it will just come naturally. And I want to add on like communication, like that's the most important thing I do feel. And it does sound very easy, communication, we do that all the time, but on the job, one thing that I did not expect before going into the industry is that, other than being a good person and meeting people and having a good time with your team, there's also PMs, developers, people who might not necessarily understand exactly, design and everything that you want to advocate for. So you really have to sometimes like find a good balance between standing your ground, advocating for your own designs, but also compromising, when should you push back, when should you kind of take a step back and move forward with a decision that you might not agree with. So that's, I think, the most important thing is communication. How do you work with other people and resolve conflicts? Because that will happen, like in every workplace that is going to happen. So I think that's my main thing that they say is pretty important.
I'm gonna echo on that too, Crystal. I think ever since like getting into my first UX position, I'm finding that I have to learn how to like talk to PMs, product managers, product owners, and then also learning how to talk to stakeholders, whether that's people in operations or even the user base, and like just trying to communicate like what you do to the organization as a whole, but also being an advocate for your user at the same time, and trying like learning how to communicate like, okay, I did this because of this and this, and also kind of curating your communication styles for the different teams and the different people you work with, and not to mention like your engineers as well, like making sure you're communicating with them at a consistent cadence, so they're in the loop with everything. So I think communication, or I suppose just like learning, I don't want to say like learning how to like talk to people, but perhaps that is the way to put it. And being like cognizant how you talk to people and like the receptiveness of it too. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, and yeah, I really like when you said like understanding what the best way to communicate to that person, because these different like engineers, PMs, they have different goals, right? When we're working on a project, like us as designers, we might focus on creating the best user experience. PMs, they might care about how are we making money, how fast can we get this out, and engineers, how hard is this to code. So you really have to curate your content and your presentation of designs to the different people that you're talking to.
And just to add on to that, I really resonate with that, because that's probably one of the biggest challenges I face on my day-to-day is really just, hey, how can I convince the other stakeholders in the room that what I want to do is actually necessary? And to kind of add on to what Crystal said about that one point, as many people have told me before, it's you really have to pick your battles. You can't win every single one, and there are certain hills that I will push as much as I can, but there's also parts that I'll realize, hey, you know what, this is not a hill I want to die on, and I want to move on from that. So that's probably the transferable skill that I've learned over the years, is kind of just how do I work with different people and try and communicate my goals in terms of what's in it for them. That's probably that part.
I wanted to add in with the communication thing. It's a lot of talking to different kinds of people. In my retail job, I talk with all manner of people, of different ages, different needs, different abilities. And a lot of times I would have to talk with kids, which I had not done before. So it's like finding different levels of communications across different kinds of people. And I never thought that I would talk with kids a lot, but then I ended up doing that. And I was just I have no idea how to talk to children. How do you talk to kids? And then later on, you would talk to someone who's very elderly. They might have a difficulty hearing, and then you have to kind of reset and change how you communicate with these different people, which is really challenging because it's with retail and warehouse jobs, it's all face-to-face and sometimes over the phone, which also can be difficult, but it was a huge lesson in that kind of communication, a variety of people, and kind of I don't want to say cater, but kind of adjusting to these different levels of communication that you need for your audience, essentially. Yeah, that helped me a lot.
One point I forgot to add that I was going to mention is, I know there's this presumption that good product designers have to be extroverts and things like that, and I just want to mention that's not true. That it's okay to be an introvert, and I know we talk a lot about communication and things like that, but there's just different communication styles, and no one should ever feel like, hey, I can't be a good product designer or UX designer because I'm an introvert.
Oh, and sorry, I had one more thing. I forgot to mention this. It was feedback, dealing with different kinds of feedback. At first, I didn't think that it would be relevant to the past jobs, but it turns out you're working with managers, store managers, your shift leaders, and they'll tell you how they think you did something, how you did a certain job or task in the store. And sometimes they might be a little bit harsh, but you kind of have to take it and be oh, okay, so how would I do it better? Or how should that improve? And also in music, you're playing for many kinds of people, audiences, fellow musicians, and sometimes getting feedback in that area could be pretty brutal. They can be very blunt and harsh, and you just kind of have to take it and be okay, so I got this really maybe blunt feedback on how I played something, the whole thing was out of tune and I just sounded bad or something. And it's kind of taking that in and being okay, so how should I practice it so that the technique or something is better and I do play in tune. So besides the communication and working with other people, I'd say handling feedback was a pretty important skill that I learned, especially in music.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. That was great. I've seen a few people talk about imposter syndrome, which I'm actually going to add that to the very end as kind of a wrap up and tips and advice for folks who are transitioning careers into design. But going to the next one, now that our panelists are on the other side of the fence, now that we're all designers, what would you say that hiring managers are looking for when they are interviewing someone and they know that they have transition careers?
I will pop in here just because I asked the head of engineering that had interviewed me and was essentially the stamp of whether or not I'd get the job. I had reached out to him last week and asked him hey, why me? Why did you guys give me the yes? And the feedback that he shared was pretty interesting. He said that while they were looking at all of the portfolios that were submitted for this position, he felt that their company was just like another number to a job seeker's, job searching journey. And he wanted to know, like, what story or what passion does this designer have that they can bring forth to this company, and their goal of being a UX designer and the impact that they want to make, like how does that align with what our company wants to do? So to circle back, like he was really looking for that intent and that passion, and he felt that some of the portfolios that came through were like lackluster of that, or wasn't curated and wasn't really relatable to what the company was trying to do. So I thought that was really interesting.
What do our other panelists think? Mai?
I would say, in addition to passion, it's curiosity. Like if you're transitioning from a completely different industry, like you're learning all this like fresh or new. And for me, it was like, that's where I was. Like I had no past experience or related to design or games design. And so I think what the hiring managers were looking for when I was being interviewed at Bungie, at least, it was, they wanted to see like what drove you, like what curiosity, like do you have for games in particular? Like why games? Like besides just saying, oh yeah, I like playing games. It's like, yeah, but why? Like, does it move you? Like what moves you? What kind of passion do you have for it? What is it like to like personally even? And you don't have to like tell like some huge life story and go off on this long thing. It's more just kind of like why games? Why UX? They want to see that you're curious, but you're also determined. So at least for the games UX, they kind of wanted to see like games related projects on your portfolio. Like you took the time to be like, yes, I want to be in games UX, and I took all this time to learn game design and apply those UX skills into a game setting or game context, which can be a little bit different. So they kind of wanted to see that you took that step forward on your own and were like, yes, I want to learn this. And I wanted to show that I know this. So here's my projects about games UX. And this is the work that I put into it. It might like be a redesign or a UX analysis of a game, but it's still showing that you still took that step forward and were like determined to do it. So I think that's also really important. Like what was said before, the curiosity and the passion, like how do you show that passion towards that company even? And with my projects, they weren't particularly towards Bungie's like games or anything, but it was just even having like a games related portfolio made it stand out a little bit more, because it's like, oh, she took those game design knowledge and UX and put it into a game setting. Like, that's cool. You want to see this now. So I think that's also really relevant, like putting it into your portfolio work as well.
Cool. Anyone else?
I think what I will add might surprise some people, but especially with my second role, what I've learned that sometimes if the job opportunity doesn't work out, it might not necessarily be that you're missing a specific set of skills or anything like that, because especially for my current role, I have come to find the reason why they chose me was because actually of my specific personality and just the organization's need, in that, hey, there were certain barriers that were already there for different stakeholders. And I seemed like the kind of person that would be able to break down those barriers. And so, sometimes when it comes to a sea of different applicants, it's not necessarily that you didn't get it because you weren't as good or something like that. The company could have just been looking for a specific, really specific person. For example, maybe they needed like someone with really strong data skills or something like that. And you know what? It's okay, right? Like, it might just not have been the greatest fit. But I know that maybe wasn't the traditional answer that many are looking for, but sometimes it's just what the company is looking for. It's not anyone's fault or anything like that.
Kenny, I think something that you touched on was actually related to something that Angela asked in the chat. do we feel like there are differences between what larger companies are looking for versus smaller ones? I know, Crystal, you're at a very large company right now, so you might have some perspective and insight to that. And then anyone else on the panel, if you're at a smaller company, I think the audience would love to know, like, what are the priorities? There is that balance between culture fit, company, right? Like being able to achieve company goals. Like there's a lot of factors involved, but what would you say are factors at your company when hiring?
I guess I can go. So I have experience like in the past also working at startups, like interning at startups. And I think the biggest difference I see is that at smaller companies slash startups, they do look for, you're a go-getter, like you can hit the ground running because they have like they need things out faster. Whereas my experience being in a bigger company, the cycle of shipping things does take a little bit longer. So, they might just look for, of course, I think overall everyone looks for, good storytelling, good craft and communication skills and everything. But smaller companies and startups would really look for that personality to, get things done really quickly and push forward. Whereas I think large companies might not be looking for that too much. Yeah, I think that's my take from it. But like in terms of the craft and like design challenges and everything else, I would say is pretty similar in my experience.
Anyone else have insight?
I had 3 job offers and they were all kind of mostly startup-y stage, but like kind of further along startup, like established startups. And almost probably the majority of the interview was a culture fit. They really put a lot of emphasis in like meeting a lot of people on the team and just chatting, like not really not doing whiteboard challenges. There was some of that, and they would make sure that you had some skill and maybe they'd go through your portfolio, but it was like mostly culture fit, I found, with the startups.
That was the same. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I agree with you there, Katie. There was a pretty interesting story that was shared with me when somebody was going into an interview and the interviewee had like jumped right into their elevator pitch, and he was like, whoa, I want to know about how your day's going. Like, you don't have to sell me on your story right now. Like, what do you like to do outside of work? What are your hobbies? Like, are we gonna like work well together? What's this person's personality like? So I think in terms of like smaller startups, I can echo on that too, Katie, where it's more of a person and a culture fit. So.
Oh, and I also want to go back to the showing the eagerness to learn. It's during the interviews, you'll probably get asked questions where you're like, I don't know, or you didn't have experience. And I think showing the eagerness to learn is saying that you don't know, which is fine, but then also continue with that question or answer. Instead of just saying, no, I don't know, you can say, no, but I'm eager to learn more about the future because I know that this will be effective to know later on and how to work with other people. With Bungie, there's a lot of cross-functional work with teams, different teams. So I do have like a UX group, but you communicate with the engineers, the tech designers, the visual designers. Did I ever say engineers? I think so. But anyway, so there's like a bunch of different people to talk to. So like, again, being able to just kind of like talk with a bunch of different people with different professions as a person and professionally is also really important, because the interview rounds I did have was with people from each team or section. And like initially I was super nervous about talking with the engineers because I was like, I don't know anything about like tech or engineering. And they did ask a question where I didn't know. And I just said, I don't know, but I'd be eager to learn more about it in the future, or take the time to learn it outside of work as well, or not outside of work, but around work too. So I think they want to see that like you're a person, obviously, but they want to see that eagerness to learn and like spin it so that you're showing, yes, I'd love to learn from you and the other teams because I'll be working with you in the future as well.
Awesome. Well, before I hand it off to Grace, I did want to share a little bit from my side. I am currently doing hiring right now, and I am intentionally looking for junior designers. And something that I look for as a hiring manager is I want to know what their goals are, not just what their goals are in the company, but I want to know what their goals are as a designer, because I also, realistically, not everyone can support everyone's goals and dreams, right? So as a hiring manager, I want to make sure that whoever I do bring on is someone that I can support with that growth. So that is, that is important. So going back to what Kenny said, if I do pass on a candidate, it's likely more that I can't deliver, or I can't do something and help them achieve what their goals are. And that wouldn't be fair to them. So that's something that I wanted to throw in there as perspective from a hiring manager. And then with that, I'll hand it over to Grace.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. These are all great insights from everyone. I know we have one more question, and then we'll head to that question about imposter syndrome. I know it's a really popular topic in the chat as well. The last question we have is, how do you tackle questions about teamwork when interviewing for your first design role, and also like working with devs or PMs if you never had that experience? Anyone can go first.
Could I know it was the last question, but I was just thinking about adding on to what Emily said.
Yeah, go ahead.
One advice I've also received from some senior designers as well is, to showcase that plan, it's good to have a focused portfolio to showcase that there is an area, for example, game design, or maybe, let's say healthcare, that you're really passionate about that. So I've come to find that can help your portfolio branding come out stronger, because it shows that, hey, like this is the industry you want, that, and you're passionate about learning it, rather than, yes, it's good to be a generalist, but at the same time, when it comes to two different portfolios, one that's really focused on one topic versus the other where it's like, hey, I don't know what I'm passionate about. It can kind of come across as a negative, that I don't really know what I want to do, rather than, hey, I'm okay with doing everything. But yeah, sorry, Grace, I can continue too. What was your question? What was your question? I forgot.
All good. Yeah, it's like, how would you tackle questions about like teamwork when interviewing your first design roles, and how would you collaborate with like devs and PMs if you never had that experience?
For sure. I think it's just kind of trying to draw upon different experiences where I've worked with stakeholders, where I need to tell them that perspective, in a sense that, I'm sure throughout everyone's different experiences, they've probably had maybe a manager or something, or someone else that maybe didn't understand a certain topic. So kind of bring on that, showing that experience where, hey, there's this topic that I had to communicate to the other person where they didn't understand. But in terms of my actual job, it's something I'm continuously learning about, as in almost learning how, for example, devs think, and figuring out, hey, like what is it that they need in order to accomplish their job, and learning how to annotate better as well from other designers and things like that. And sometimes just trying things out. And if it doesn't work, moving on, right? So for example, currently at work, I'm trying out recording different videos. And that's kind of the reason why I bought the mic as well, so that hopefully I can tell a better story about what is it I'm trying to implement, so that they can understand the context. But yes, I see that we're running out of time, so I'll pass it on to the next person.
I told the people interviewing me just straight up that was one of the reasons that I wanted a job with them, is that I wanted more experience working on teams. I obviously, photography can be incredibly collaborative, and the position that I had right before switching over was very, very collaborative. But and although like I can work with people, and that's, like that's fine, I hadn't really worked on a design team, right? Like I really didn't have a lot of experience with that. And I would just say, I don't have experience. That's why I want a job like this rather than doing freelance, is because I really like working in a team. I like the collaboration. I think you can push each other further. I want to know more about development. I want to know everything I can about communicating better. And that seemed to be a good answer.
From something that's like completely like no experience at all, I just drew a lot on working in different teams at retail, because you get like divided into different sections of the store or whatever. You have like your own little team. So I talked about that. And also in music, when you're playing in ensembles, it's technically teamwork, because you have to be on good balance with everyone's different personalities, attitudes about certain types of music, how they want to interpret something, and handling arguments when that happens. So instead of just being like, oh yeah, I totally work with engineers, because I didn't, I just made sure to draw specifically on teamwork activities from past experience, whether it's music, teaching, retail, warehouse. If you worked in a retail, like, did you train new employees? Like, you're still communicating with people, groups of people, which still counts as teamwork. So if you have a background like that, I think that would be really helpful to draw on as well.
I want to jump in and echo something that Katie said, but not really answering this question, but just something general for interviews is when someone asks you a question and you don't have an answer, or when you don't know something or you don't have the experience doing it, I feel like a lot of us, when you're doing an interview, you're obviously nervous, but we would, get so scared of not having an answer. And I think I love what Katie said is it's okay to be straight up, be like, I don't know, or I did not have experience like doing that. And like, I think that's fine. And sometimes like employers and hiring managers might like that, you're being honest, you're not lying, you're not making things up. So yeah, that's just another thing I wanted to bring up, and just like a general interview thing that I found really worked for me in my interviews, and they liked that honesty.
You can also ask how they plan on working with you too. I found that was it always opens up like a very fun conversation when you ask like, well, like, how would you work with me? Or how do you see us working together? I always ask my engineers that, and it's always really fun to have that open communication. So.
Awesome. Do you want to do the imposter syndrome question? I know we have like 4 more minutes and we can do a group photo.
Oh, that's our favorite question every single time. Actually, you know what? Let's turn the tables on to Grace. What would you also switched careers, and I'm sure you remember what that experience was like years ago. I mean, even though for me it's like years and years ago, same for you, it's still very fresh in my mind. So imposter syndrome, are you over it officially, or how did you kind of manage it while you were going through your first rounds of interviews?
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, I feel like I might get hate for saying this, but I'm over it. Like, for me, like, I just stopped caring. Like, I feel like for me, I used to care too much. This includes like too many things out of my control, like what other people thought of me. Once I stopped caring about that and just like wanting to just be happy, create value, and be chill, everything started to fall in place for me. And I feel like I grew up in a high school where everyone was like, what'd you get on your GPA? Like, what'd you get on your test score? Like, very, very competitive like that. And I had that mindset growing up. I was also a competitive cross-country and track runner. So everything was all about times, numbers, grades. And that was like ingrained in me. So it was really hard for me to get out of that mindset. And after doing that, it also feels so free. So I feel like there's a lot of things in life that you can control and can't control. And just had to realize, at least for me, that I just had to like not care about things I can't control. This includes other people's opinions. Like, once I stopped working towards trying to satisfy everyone, because that's impossible, I just tried to just do my best, and whatever outcome goes, it will be. And just learning to be happy, learning to like lower my standards a little bit and not care about things out of my control. So that's what helped me in my imposter syndrome. I feel like it was just like this 2022 revelation for me. Definitely struggled a lot. You can totally understand. I used to feel like this small potato in this big world of design. That's actually why I created Design Buddies, because I felt really intimidated. A lot of imposter syndrome in other design communities, actually. And I wanted to create like a wholesome place where everyone can just like talk about design, support each other, share resources, learn together. And here we are today, almost 37,000 members on Discord 2 years later. So glad they all worked off. So everyone deals with imposter syndrome. But for me, once I stopped caring about things I can't control and how I'm not entitled or not, it's not my responsibility to please everyone, that helped me like get over that. And now I feel like free to do anything. So highly recommend that. Yeah, I know we have like 2 more minutes. Do we want to do a group photo?
Let's do a group photo. We love small potatoes. We're all small potatoes.
Yeah, and just
Awesome.
to add on to what Grace said, I think one of the mentors in Design Buddies often says as well, like when it comes to it, it's just looking at it as a process and not reaching the end result like in one step. And it's the same thing with design. Just keep iterating and just making sure that as long as you're going in the right direction, then hey, there's nothing wrong specifically about that. It's okay.
Yeah, and I feel like life is always like a process. There's always room to learn and grow. Just keep an open mind. Like even if you fail, good. Now you learn that doesn't work, so you can apply your learnings to iterate your life, like UXing your life. That's how I look at it. Nothing is finished. There's always room to improve. Cool. Feel free to turn on your camera, everyone. I'll count down 5 seconds, and y'all welcome to bring any object you want. I have Fluffle with me. We're gonna do a static group photo first, and then a wave for our Instagram story. Oh, thank y'all in the chat. I'm just reading through. I love it. Yeah, thank y'all. I'll count down 10 seconds for y'all to turn on your cameras if you wish. And I'll drop Design Buddies links in the chat too. Y'all welcome to connect with me as well. And Design Buddies, we'll do a static group photo first and then a wait for Instagram story. Yeah, and then at the end, we'll have time where y'all can just like plug away and drop all of your socials and make sure you connect with each person and stuff. Well, you can connect with each other. All right, ready, set. Oh, make sure to stay smiling because we have many pages. Ready, set, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, smile. All right, you're going to do a wave for Instagram story. So you'll find this at design.buddies. It's something we like to do at Design Buddies events to spice things up. All right, ready, set, wave. Hello, buddies. We just finished a very wholesome event about leveraging your background for design interviewing with our buddies at Designlab. Thank you to probably like 400 people for coming in Zoom today. You can all check out the recording on our YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone. Cool. So that concludes our event. Any last takeaways from any of our panelists before we hop off to do our quick event recap? And y'all plug away in the chat too. Want everyone to stay connected. Here are my socials as well.
Thanks for giving us this time, Grace.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks
Very
to
fun.
Grace and Emily for organizing it, just giving us the chance to talk about our experiences.
Yeah, thank y'all for being on and sharing all y'all's experiences and insights. Really appreciate it. Cool. Everyone, plug away, connect with us, connect with all of our panelists. I'm going to drop the Luma link with all our panelists info if you want to connect with them. Yeah, just plug away. We'll open a breakout room with all of our hosts and organizers here, but y'all welcome to stay, chat about your takeaways, and just like connect with each other. We're not going to kick you out because I just feel bad doing that. So we're letting y'all like plug and connect and grow your network.
Thanks, chat, for showing up. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you everyone for turning on your camera. We noticed that like more people did it this time, so we're really, really happy. It always feels really great to see everyone's faces and know who y'all are as well. So really appreciate